The main character and his sister are gifted with a power that most people can only wish for. They can live forever. Yet what seemed like a gift turned out to be a burden instead. They had been taken advantage of by individuals from a guild that insisted they were protectors of mankind. In truth, however, they were simply creatures of darkness. The guild members repeatedly took the lives of the protagonist and his sister, using their deaths as a way to earn experience and increase their own power. After many attempts, the siblings succeeded in breaking free one day. The main character made a firm decision to reveal the reality about the pretenders to everyone and ensure they faced consequences for the wrongs they had committed against them. The tale opens during a fierce conflict, drawing readers straight into a pivotal struggle that shapes the destinies of the main characters and holds the future of all in its grasp. The Demon King sat atop his grand throne, encircled by bizarre and fearsome monsters, as one of the heroes faced him with determination. The hero's identity soon emerges as who is recognized for her exceptional talent with a sword. As the battle commenced, surged ahead, wielding his sword to strike at the bizarre creatures before him. He quickly demonstrates his outstanding skill with a sword by defeating many opponents at once. He beckoned to a nearby ally, signaling for them to enter the battle alongside him. The ally turned out to be a towering fighter known as. Yet, as both of them charged at the Demon King side by side, they recoil in shock when he reacts with sudden aggression, releasing a powerful wave of fire to remind them of their place, making it clear that, in his eyes, they are merely insignificant creatures beneath him. Just then, a sorceress materializes and summons a towering wall of ice, protecting everyone from the ferocious blaze. His identity as a member of the hero team quickly comes to light. With a reassuring smile, she lets everyone know that no one has been hurt at all, acknowledged that he was indebted to her for rescuing him, and at the same time pointed out that, despite the presence of the barrier, the destruction had already been done. Before he could complete his sentence, two hands unexpectedly extended from behind, offering and Shakara healing potions to help with their injuries, and it soon became clear that the person helping them was named Taro. Once they finished drinking the potion and looked over at their fifth companion, wanting to know if he felt prepared to join the battle now. The teammate, identified as the group's leader, quickly moves ahead to face the Demon King. As the battle raged on, the Demon King found himself stunned by the sheer force of his abilities. The story moves to a different location, where crowds rejoice after learning that the S-rank hunter guild called has triumphed over the Demon King. For almost 2 centuries, the gateway that unleashed these creatures had stayed open, giving monsters the chance to endanger humanity during all those years. The news broadcast reported that members of had successfully defeated one of the 7 Demon Kings, emphasizing just how significant this accomplishment was. The next scene shifts to a busy street, where a reporter by the name of comes across the members. The crowds erupted in applause, celebrating the hero's achievements as led his team through the jubilant throng. Walked up to the heroes, offering praise for their triumph against the Demon King, and preparing to ask them questions about their victory. Representing his entire team, expressed gratitude to her, and pointed out that their success was made possible by the encouragement and help from people worldwide. Curious, wondered aloud how they had managed to gain such extraordinary strength, particularly as S-rank hunters. Despite the situation, an unexpected hush sweeps over the whole team, leaving them seemingly uncertain about what to say next. Swiftly collects himself, explaining that their remarkable strength naturally comes from the effort they put into training every day. Once the interview concluded, the group found themselves in a new setting. Let out a mocking laugh in response to earlier statement, clearly amused as she dismissed his claim about daily training, treating it as if he had only been joking. Shakara joined in the laughter and admitted that had a point. The sorceress interjected at that moment, confidently stating that their group truly did put in strenuous training on a daily basis. Afterward, the alchemist known as Taro gave a sly smile, reflecting on how, ultimately, this was the work they were meant to do, and there was no way to avoid it. Smiled warmly, assuring everyone that their actions held significant value, and questioned whether anyone disagreed. However, his demeanor shifted abruptly as he turned to address 2 people directly, labeling them as monsters. At that moment, the scene shifts to expose a young man and a girl, both bound by chains fastened to the wall. Before long, it becomes clear that the young man's name is, and the girl standing next to him is identified as his sister. Could easily tell from their weary faces that these people had been trapped in this place for a very long time, and the team moved closer to the 2 brothers. But when the brothers gave no answer, observed that some individuals could be very stubborn. He went on to express to the brothers that because of their actions, both he and his team had become more powerful, and their strength kept growing. Following the exchange, he moved nearer to show his appreciation, but in an unexpected turn, swiftly swung his sword, landing a fierce blow. The onlookers were stunned when they saw swiftly and confidently turn aside strike, completely reversing the situation in an instant. In their world, people soon realized that true power and wisdom could not be earned just by battling common creatures. A warrior could only become stronger by battling certain types of monsters. There was, however, a single exception to this rule. When a warrior managed to overcome entities that were not not destined to die on their own. It could lead to a boost in the warrior's power. Sure, here is the rewritten sentence. Within a few moments, collects himself, appearing completely unaffected by what just occurred, rose to his feet, a satisfied grin spreading across his face as he reveled in the strength he had gained and the advancements he had achieved. After cleaning his sword, explained to that their power to heal gave them endless chances to perfect their abilities. At that point, and looked utterly exhausted, struggling to match the pace set by their rivals. Chikara moves ahead, unleashing a powerful assault against her opponents, her strength leaving them unable to defend themselves. Without a second thought, he quickly delivers a powerful blow that leaves one of his opponents badly injured. The sorceress steps forward and releases a fierce wave of fire energy draining much of strength. Once they had recovered, Taro moved toward and presented her with a fresh ordeal meant to push her limits even further. At the same time, faced his brother, challenging him to reach the peak of his fighting abilities. After the group achieves the goals they had set for themselves, announces that their practice session has been a success. Despite his progress, insists that his current strength does not satisfy him and expresses a firm resolve to grow even more powerful. Let out a weary sigh, accusing him of being fixated on power and confessing her own fatigue. Mentions that he is also feeling worn out from the day's events and wants a moment to unwind. Taro sat at his desk, the glow from his computer screen highlighting the worry on his face. The others soon realized that something was troubling him. When they tried to find out what was wrong, Taro explained that he had been having a hard time collecting information lately, a task that used to come easily to him. Encouraged him to slow down, noting how dedicated he had been and suggesting he deserved some time to relax and have fun. Taro shifted his attention to offering her a fresh challenge, yet a sense of monotony and boredom weighed heavily on him as everything seemed to fall into the same predictable pattern. Hesitated briefly, then expressed that everyone had started to feel the dullness of their routine. He then turns his gaze to, who remains bound in chains in front of the group, silently considering what to do next. After a short pause, he moved closer to Taro and pointed out that there remained an unexplored part of her powers they should attempt to test. Taro's eyes widened with surprise, as though he had just encountered a stroke of genius. A smile spread across his face, and he acknowledged the other's cleverness with genuine admiration. He points out that they have always concentrated on fighting techniques, yet they have overlooked alternative methods to improve their abilities. He moved toward the sorceress, requesting her magical aid for their latest challenge. Without hesitation, consented to help. She quietly recites an incantation, hoping to observe what might happen as a result. Unexpectedly, shows clear awareness of her surroundings, and seems to understand exactly what everyone is intending to do. Just then, cut into the conversation and proposed that they take a short break before revealing that he wanted to participate as well. Responded with a laugh, remarking that challenges were something everyone found enjoyable. She is caught off guard when instructs her to free from the restraints. Curious, she questions his reasoning and responds with a playful grin, explaining that he finds it fascinating to see his sister endure everything without having the chance to step in. Asserted that the upcoming performance promised to be thrilling. With his instructions, and unexpectedly realized that the restraints holding him had vanished, granting him freedom. As soon as he senses the thrill of being free, he catches sight of his sister being led away. He scrambled to his feet and hurried after them, calling out desperately for them to halt. Before he has a chance to react, casts a spell that holds him in place, stopping him from moving forward. Rose to his feet, a mocking laugh escaping him as he looked down at. He declared that, for this evening, would experience the spectacle from a new point of view. Went on to clarify that sacred magic was different from fire or other forms of attack, possessing its own special impact. He notes that the restrictions currently imposed on him are keeping him from regaining his full strength. Consumed by intense frustration and rage, declared that forgiveness was impossible and vowed to discover a way to bring everything to a close. Before he could complete his thought, sword struck swiftly, cutting him off and leaving him speechless. Stood above the other person, conveying through his presence that silence was the best choice. He implied that this particular night was meant for observation, not conversation. He goes on to suggest that should direct any blame toward his own destiny instead of anyone else. Stood by, overwhelmed by helplessness as he witnessed his sister's ordeal. Meanwhile, informed Taro that they should depart immediately, reminding him of their packed schedule and the crucial meetings awaiting them overseas. Taro explained that he too had to go back because he had some tasks left incomplete. As left the cell, he chuckled and made a light-hearted remark about Taro being the only person worried about those kinds of things. Taro explained that each person sees things differently and mentioned that no additional restrictions had been imposed on the siblings. explained that waking at this moment would only make her extremely angry, and escaping from their current location would be nearly impossible anyway. Despite this, he told Taro to double-check that the cell door was firmly locked. Lay helpless on the floor, the magical restraints holding him firmly in place, while waves of intense pain course through his body. Without warning, a sharp pain courses through him as someone yanks the sword out of his body. As the weapon leaves his flesh, the agony intensifies, and he looks up to discover that the one responsible is his own sister. He becomes even more astonished as he watches her pick up the sword and hold it to her own body. In a panic, he yells for her to stop, desperate to keep her from hurting herself. Finds herself consumed by intense distress, struggling to cope with the weight of all she has been through. Overwhelmed by her emotions, she found herself unable to hold back any longer, insisting again and again that she couldn't endure it. Desperation filling her voice, she turned to her older brother, begging him to help her escape the pain she was trapped in. Just then, remembered what had said about the suffering caused by his stopped regeneration. This made think that there might be a solution to end his sister's torment. He requested that she wield the weapon to cut off his arm, convinced that this action might offer a solution. Reluctantly accepts the weapon, struggling with the task she's been asked to perform. Uncertainty fills her as she admits she cannot bring herself to cause him harm. With regret, she apologizes for not being able to fulfill his request. He calmly assured her, clarifying that as immortals, their bodies would only heal if they suffered deadly harm, and encouraged her to proceed and carry out what he had asked. She paused briefly, her heart heavy with sorrow, before making the painful decision to wound his arm. As she did, guilt washed over her, and she silently begged for his forgiveness, tormented by the hurt she was causing him. Reassured her that her actions were justified, then requested that she target his heart next. He promised her that by doing so, he would come back even more powerful than before. Pushed by an overwhelming need to bring her brother back, gathers her courage and plunges the weapon into his chest. At that instant, an intense burst of energy radiates from his body, engulfing her completely. The unexpected sensation leaves her stunned, and her surprise deepens when a notification pops up, revealing that her level has just gone up. At that moment's body was fully healed, and he rose to his feet once more. Still in shock, wondered aloud why her level had gone up. It was then that realization dawned on, and he finally grasped what had taken place. Began to grasp the situation and wondered if her brother understood what was on her mind. Despite her silent question, shook his head, rejecting her idea, and insisted that she was not allowed to proceed with her plan. She explains that her intention is not for him to end her life. Instead, she believes he will use her as a tool to eliminate the others. She explained to him that they needed to seek vengeance against everyone responsible for their suffering. At first, wavers, uncertain about what to do. However, the memories of all that he and his sister have recently faced come rushing back to him. Motivated by their shared struggles, he ultimately agrees with her idea, assuring her that they will put it into action right away. The siblings continued their endless cycle, each taking turns ending the other's life. Was the first to strike, bringing down, but in the following round, returned the favor by killing. The cycle repeated endlessly, with each round pushing them to new limits of strength forged by relentless pain and hardship, all fueled by an unyielding desire for vengeance. The narrative returns to the early days of Scroop within the guild, a period when Taro held the reputation of being an S-rank member who managed all of the team's gear. He had a reputation for being silent and was usually seen as timid by others. Yet, anyone who spent time with him realized there was something mysterious about him that made him hard to figure out. 3 years prior to the current events, Taro found himself inside the guild, fastening a creature to a Just then, walked in and observed how committed Taro was to what he was doing. Taro felt a wave of surprise wash over him when approached solely to deliver that message. However, continued, expressing how captivated he was by Taro's work. He then wondered aloud if Taro might want to examine something even more remarkable. Curious about what had said, Taro decided to accompany him into a quiet, seldom visited chamber within the guild. Prior to stepping inside, assembled his whole team and questioned whether they longed for recognition and success. Noticed their confusion and explained further, letting everyone know that starting now, each of them would get a chance to shine and let others see what they were capable of. He went on to explain that the days to come held limitless possibilities and promised a kind of greatness that no person had ever achieved. Despite this, he explained that reaching this goal required being confined to the darkness forever, with no possibility of ever finding a way out. After unveiling this secret, he wondered aloud whether they would remain by his side and accept the glorious journey he proposed. Quickly assured everyone of their unity, emphasizing that they stood together with him and pursued a common objective. Voiced his support for statement, indicating that he felt the same way. Pushed open a door that revealed a staircase going down from their current room, motioning for the others to come after him. He promised that he would guide them toward a destiny where they would be celebrated and well-known. Boldly took the lead as he descended, while the rest of the group trailed after him. As they went, Taro confessed his surprise, revealing he had never realized a place like this was hidden away. Guessed that the guild had once used this hidden chamber to lock up its foes and anyone who stood against it. Proceeded to unlock a second door, this time an electronic barrier that required him to press all 5 fingertips against a scanner before it would grant him access. The rest of the group lingered in his shadow, their faces revealing hesitation as they waited to discover what he intended to reveal. As soon as the door swung open, revealed, and showing that he had taken them captive and tied them up within the room, the team stared in disbelief when they saw the 2 prisoners. Unease swept through the group as they quickly expressed their worries too, insisting that his plan was a mistake. Despite their objections, calmly tried to put them at ease, assuring everyone that there was nothing to fear. He went on to clarify that, despite and looking like humans, their blood was completely unlike that of actual people. He moved nearer to the bound siblings and exposed their true identity as part of the Immortal Clan, a lineage believed to have vanished long ago. Without warning, he unsheathed his sword and slashed at, cutting through one side of his face with no sign of mercy or concern for his humanity. Afterward, he informed the group that its body would soon heal and restore the injured area. The team, caught off guard, questioned whether the Immortal Clan, long thought to be extinct, might still be alive. Although the news captivated them, they remained puzzled about how it related to the honor that mentioned. At that instant, lifted his phone for everyone to see. He proceeded to clarify that the program open on his screen was a level measurement application, a tool he had been using ever since he became a member of the guild. The program sorted each member's status by evaluating both their physical abilities and magical skills, which equipped them to battle dangerous monsters. Afterward, he clarified that the guild held an A-rank designation, signifying that only those with a level of 20 or higher were eligible to become members. The team members were taken aback when they discovered that had already advanced to level 50. Went on to describe how people usually gained experience and grew stronger by battling monsters. However, he pointed out that this method came with great risks. Without enough caution, a person could end up losing their life in the process. He explains that those people are available for their intended use. Suddenly, is struck in the abdomen by a sword, the weapon passing clean through her as everyone watches in shock. He adds that from this point on, they will be able to increase their levels with ease. Taro is the first to react with excitement upon learning the news, eagerly expressing to just how amazing he finds it. He reached into his pocket, drew out a knife, and moved toward, his eyes gleaming with excitement as he shared his fascination with exploring the human body's anatomy and vulnerabilities. He plunged a knife into and demanded to know how the pain felt, then repeatedly drove the blade into various places on her body, relentlessly interrogating her about the agony of being ripped apart. Afterward, he discovers that his level has actually risen, and a surge of happiness washes over him. He moved nearer to once more, gently taking off the blindfold covering her eyes and face. As he looked at her, he shared how much he admired her appearance and how overjoyed he felt in that moment. Afterward, he encouraged her to share more about her life with him. He then continues to rip her body apart with wild enthusiasm, his mind racing with curiosity about whether she could endure being poisoned, put under anesthesia, or even having her brain removed. As he works, he also speculates about how much longer she might live if her organs were fed to insects. Upon observing the situation, Shia remarked to the siblings that their appearance and behavior made them seem like undying creatures from legends. He and his teammates exchanged smiles, silently acknowledging that, because they were not human, being treated in this manner seemed justifiable to them. At the same time, observed the scene with satisfaction, taking pleasure in the harsh torment being dealt to the siblings and offering words of praise to motivate their tormentors. He shifted his attention to, and expressing confidence in his ability to manage them, and emphasizing that their skills would be a significant asset to the group. Back in the present, the team prepared to leave for the interviews that had talked about earlier. At the airport, arrived wearing a sharp suit, his expression revealing how unexpected it was for him to be included in the interview. Noticed his muscular build, and inquired if people with his physique ever felt awkward in such formal attire. While Shia's attention wanders as he takes in his surroundings, he wonders aloud about Taro's whereabouts. Responds, explaining that Taro must be spending time with his doll bride and is eager to pursue his latest experiment. Observing this, Shia notes that Taro appears unusually enthusiastic. Later on, Taro made his way back to the guild building, ready to pick up where he had left off. As he stepped into his room, a burst of laughter escaped him, fueled by his excitement. He stepped through the doorway and greeted, announcing his arrival and explaining that he was there to visit his doll bride. With a note of regret, he expressed his apologies for having left her by herself. Unexpectedly, he witnesses wielding a weapon weapon and fatally attacking his sister. In that instant, he realizes that this grim sequence of events has been unfolding since the night before. Taro let out a desperate cry, demanding to know the other person's intentions while pleading for the life of his doll bride. He goes on to explain that her death could mean losing the results of the experiment performed on her the previous day, alluding to the pregnancy that had brought up earlier. Without warning, the siblings stood up before him, startling him with a change in their condition. Just the previous night, they had seemed utterly frail, but now they appeared completely transformed. It soon became clear that a fighter who overcame an opponent of the same or lesser strength would earn only a small amount of experience. If a fighter manages to overcome a creature that is more powerful than themselves, their experience level rises quickly and by a large amount. Because the siblings kept ending each other's lives over and over, they constantly surpassed one another's power with each new round, which led to their levels increasing at an astonishing rate. Their bodies and muscles underwent dramatic changes within a short period because their strength grew so quickly. At that instant, Taro struggled to make sense of the scene before him. A wave of terror washed over him, causing him to stumble backward in an attempt to escape the room. Confusion clouded his mind as he failed to understand the fate that had befallen the creatures. He backed away step by step until his heels touched the first stair. Under his breath, he insisted that action had to be taken right away. Spinning around to face the others, he expressed his confusion about how they had managed to break free and change like this. However, he made it clear that they would not be able to get away. He continued to retreat, only stopping when his hand brushed against a switch marked danger. Without hesitation, he pressed it. Just then, a different door swung wide, and an immense creature appeared. Taro stood next to the beast, confidently announcing to the group that any hope of fleeing was pointless, promising that both he and Chimera would end their lives once more. In that moment, the truth became clear. The gentle-looking Chimera, whom Taro had planned to feed, was actually the same monster responsible for tormenting and, despite the danger, and stood their ground, their courage unwavering. They realized that this was their chance to finally strike back against the monsters who had caused them so much pain. Moved ahead, positioning himself in front of the creature, as Taro remained behind it, guiding the beast toward, and in a clear effort to frighten them, comforted his sister, urging her to stay calm and move away from Chimera, assuring her that he would take care of the situation on his own. Upon hearing those words, Taro couldn't hold back a boisterous laugh, ridiculing as he questioned if really grasped the reality of their predicament to make such a statement. He pointed out that stood alone, while he had Chimera supporting him, which meant had no possibility of victory. Just then, Chimera's anger intensified, causing Taro to step in and soothe the creature. He tried to convince Chimera that was simply food and promised to keep it well fed with many delicious meals. He shifted his attention to, and making it clear that in his eyes, they were nothing more than sustenance. He implied that it would be wiser for them to stay in chains, quietly surrendering their experience points to help him grow stronger. Following that moment, he burst into laughter and turned his attention to, expressing his belief that their fun would increase if she were to become Chimera's partner. Surprise grew stronger when he wondered aloud about the type of child that might be born from a chimera and someone belonging to the immortal tribe. At that instant, conjured a protective barrier to separate from the rest, his eyes burning with fury as he fixed his gaze on Taro and vowed to end his life. Taro burst into uncontrollable laughter once more, daring to make an attempt. With a mocking tone, Taro insisted that was nothing but prey in their eyes. In that moment, Chimera's rage overflowed, propelling it forward at astonishing speed as it charged straight at. The blow knocked him to the ground, exposing the truth that the creature's tail was actually an enormous snake. Found himself stunned, unprepared for the overwhelming power and lightning-fast movements that Chimera displayed. Without warning, a pair of hands clutching a knife emerged and plunged the blade into his body. This assault had been carefully planned by Taro, who utilized the very same power he once used to heal Shia and, despite his efforts, he was unable to get a clear view of. Instead, he attacked by partially teleporting his blade, making it clear through his actions that any attempt by to flee would be met with swift retaliation. At that moment, it became clear that as individuals advanced in level, they could gain special abilities. The abilities each individual possesses depend on their fighting style, background, and level of expertise. Due to his many responsibilities, Taro had developed a wide range of skills, such as controlling the elements, understanding medicines, training monsters, and mastering the art of assassination. He was currently employing a skill that allowed him to open gateways connecting two distant places. This power was valuable not just for moving items from one spot to another, but it also served as a dangerous tool for carrying out secret killings, making it an uncommon and highly sought-after ability. With the skills he had honed by overcoming the Demon King, he now held enough power to meet the requirements of an S-rank guild. Realized he was caught in a dangerous position, with Chimera blocking his escape on one side side, and Taro launching unseen strikes from the other. Without warning, Chimera's tail, resembling a serpent, wrapped tightly around S's leg and lifted him high above the ground, suspending him upside down. At that exact instant, Taro struck, cutting off both of S's arms. Chimera lunged forward, swinging its massive claws that loomed over, making him appear tiny in comparison. Taro let out another laugh, mocking as he declared that, regardless of how powerful became, he would forever be nothing but a feeble opponent with only the ability to heal himself. In Taro's eyes, was nothing more than prey, existing solely to help others become stronger and gain valuable experience. At that moment, observed the scene with anxiety, her heart pounding with worry for her brother as he confronted the terrifying Chimera and the unhinged Taro. Chimera's fury surged to its highest point, as Taro informed that there was no longer any hope of survival, and then ordered Chimera to consume him. As soon as Taro issued the command, Chimera sprang forward and launched an assault on. After Taro consumed a portion of S's body, he observed that Chimera seemed drained of energy and quickly lost interest in eating any further. A few moments passed before he witnessed Chimera suddenly fall to the floor, a strange green liquid oozing out from its mouth. The creature's body became still next to, who was soaked in blood that had spread beneath him. Taro hurried over to Chimera to see what was wrong, but was taken aback when unexpectedly rose to his feet, explained that he had hoped to prevent this situation, yet now felt there was no alternative. Taro noticed that S's lost limbs and damaged body parts had completely grown back, then revealed to Taro that he was responsible for Chimera's death. Taro, consumed by a powerful mix of anger and sorrow over the loss of his cherished animal, attacked in an uncontrolled frenzy. His strikes were relentless as he plunged his weapon into again and again, his shouts echoing his desperate demand for S's life to end. Despite the situation, remained composed and explained to him that losing excessive blood could be fatal. Taro stood motionless, bewildered by what had just said. At that moment, he became aware of an injury on his hand, smeared with the identical green fluid that had previously oozed from Chimera's mouth as it perished. Without warning, he fell to the floor before, his voice echoing with pain as he wailed that a fiery sensation was consuming him. At that instant, it was evident that S's recent increase in level had granted him a new ability, the power to inflict poison. His body underwent a dramatic change, becoming a source of deadly poison. He explained to Taro that it was his own blood, now turned toxic, that was causing the fatal effects inside him. Taro remained unconvinced, firmly maintaining that no one in their tribe could gain powers other than regeneration, unless they underwent significant training. On the other hand, insisted that he had never required any training, pointing out that he had already been subjected to his poisons countless times in the past. He reached for Taro's knife, drew it across his own palm, and allowed his blood to fall onto Taro, explaining that he was simply giving back the poison he had suffered before. Following that moment, he unleashed a forceful kick that launched Taro clear across the room, walked up to the person, expressing how they had taken away the tranquility he used to enjoy. He reflected on how, even when he cried out in agony, nobody had ever intervened to help him. He went on to explain that he was not alone in his pain. His younger sister had endured the same fate. As he finished speaking, he drove his fist hard into Taro's stomach. At this stage, appeared weak and broken, barely clinging to life as he desperately begged for someone to save him with what little strength he had left. At that critical moment, activated his regeneration power, mending Taro's injuries and saving his life. Taro stood in shock as the realization dawned on him that had come to his rescue. Confused, he wanted to understand why would go to such lengths for him, responded in a matter-of-fact way, implying that the answer should have been clear from the start. He went on to express that Taro's pain and injuries were still not enough to meet his desires. The intensity of his anger remained, burning fiercely within him. He went on to say that he had often imagined what emotions they might have experienced as they cut his body into pieces with a blade. Now, he intended to let Taro discover that feeling firsthand. He would show Taro what karma truly meant. The story moves to, and his companions making their way back to the guild headquarters, exchanging playful, teasing remarks about the possible antics Taro could have gotten up to with his toy. Noticed that evening was approaching, and reminded Shia they still needed to celebrate defeating the Demon King. He told her to look for Taro. Following his instructions, Shia stepped inside the building and began searching for Taro, calling his name as she went. Upon reaching the location, he discovered Chimera lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by a pool of blood. Worried, he shouted out for Taro once more, desperate to find out what had occurred. Still, there was only silence. Then, his gaze landed on a startling sight that rooted him to the spot, filling him with a mix of fear and astonishment. At that moment, it became clear that he had witnessed Taro's torn and blood-soaked body, suspended in the same cell where, and had previously been held captive, with crimson liquid pooling on the floor below him. The story returns to an earlier time, showing that Shikara had previously held the title of S-rank warrior, known for her mastery in martial arts, and recognized as one of the most powerful members within the guild. He had a reputation for his intense dedication, always ready to put his own safety on the line, and make personal sacrifices to protect his fellow guild members. Although few could see past those close to him understood that his cleverness was both profound and elusive. He inspired admiration among his classmates, many of whom longed to be as strong and physically impressive as he was. Despite their efforts, they realized that achieving his strength or building a physique as impressive as his would always be out of their reach. During that moment, happened to catch their conversation about him. He explained that his strong physique came from relentless training and motivated them to continue putting in their own effort. He turned and strode off, leaving the group gazing after him with admiration as they silently promised themselves to heed his guidance. Chikara experienced a sense of satisfaction whenever he noticed their admiration for him. They viewed him as an example to follow and frequently shared their hopes of becoming heroes in his footsteps. A year before, it became clear that he had found immense satisfaction in tormenting and convinced that the best training was the kind that produced immediate and noticeable progress. Driven by his belief that harsher methods would produce better results, he escalated the violence with every act, certain that each brutal encounter served as the best form of training. He sneered at, finding amusement in her suffering. As he toyed with her, he remarked on how effortless it was to grow stronger by defeating weak monsters like her, who lacked the power to fight back. He continued carrying out ruthless techniques, determined to increase his strength and boost his physical abilities even more. As time went on, he grew increasingly annoyed by how much slower it was to advance between levels, even though he understood that this slowdown was simply a result of his growing power. During the repeated torment and countless executions of the captor's interest faded, as his inability to fight back drained all excitement from the ordeal. Despite being hit with force and facing demands for a response that would feed the other's pride, chose to stay quiet. Driven by his desire to hear and his sister cry out in pain, Chikara began employing harsher and more unforgiving tactics. He became even more brutal, torturing and killing his victims with horrifying methods that imagination. A grim sense of accomplishment washed over him as he tallied the number of ribs he had shattered that day, ultimately marking a staggering 200 breaks during just one session. He looked back at, insisting that she raise her voice as he methodically fractured her bones, making it clear that her anguished screams needed to satisfy his twisted desires. While he increased the severity of her torment, he relentlessly ripped body, causing her to cry out in agony. The sound of her screams filled with overwhelming satisfaction. He persisted in harassing the siblings while they were together, and ultimately demanded that they stage a show for his amusement before he departed. The story returns to the present time, with Chikara displaying his strength to his teammates as he lifts heavy weights. In the midst of his demonstration, Shia bursts into the room, urgently letting him know that a disaster has occurred. Chikara rose to her feet without hesitation, prompting the others to quickly gather around as they rushed to the cell. There, a horrifying scene awaited them. Tero's lifeless form dangled from above, his skin battered with injuries and crimson streams oozing from countless cuts. Insisted on finding out the siblings' location, but Shia responded that he was clueless. Upon Shia's arrival at the scene, both siblings were already gone. He shifted his attention too, emphasizing that any revelation of their deeds would spark an international uproar. At the same time, raised her voice, desperately crying out to Tero and pleading with him to hold on and survive. Just then he noticed that Tero's laptop remained open, its screen still glowing softly. As he drew closer and glanced at the monitor, he realized that every event involving Tero had been captured and saved on video. Consumed by intense feelings and boiling anger, he faced his teammates and insisted that the siblings were responsible for Tero's terrible suffering, urging them to take vengeance and end the siblings' lives. In the blink of an eye, shock swept through the team as unsheathed his sword and aimed it directly at Tero. The group immediately cried out, desperate for him to halt his actions. Their astonishment grew even more intense as they witnessed him attack, slicing through their ally's neck with one swift, lethal movement that killed him on the spot. Chikara moved closer to, seizing him firmly while insisting on an answer for his recent actions. He stressed that because of Tero had lost any hope of recovery or coming back to their group. In response, explained that letting Tero live would have merely extended his pain. As Chikara began to protest, Shia backed choice, reasoning that Tero's state left him with no hope of making it through. The sorceress, her voice heavy with sadness, explained that Tero had suffered terrible torment and admitted that not even her magic could have rescued him from such agony. Chikara fell to the ground, overcome by sorrow, her cries echoing through the air as she promised herself that one day she would take revenge on and, after decapitating his comrade, remained motionless and speechless, lost in shock, while Shia repeatedly called out to him, hoping to get a response. After eventually noticing him, he only inquired about the reason for the call. Shia brushed off the question, claiming it was unimportant, and then grew quiet, turned to his team, and informed them that the moment had come to reveal Taro's passing, the very hero who had safeguarded the world. Shia wondered aloud about organizing a funeral before anything else, but quickly dismissed the idea, firmly stating that they needed to announce the news of his death to the public right away. The focus moves to, and as they escape from the guild headquarters, dashing among the trees in the forest while trying to avoid being seen. Even with all the power she and her companions had gained, his body remained frail from the long months in chains and suffering. The exhaustion overwhelmed her, and she fell to the ground, unable to take another step. Gently reminded her not to overexert herself, suggesting that she take a moment to relax. Feeling immense relief after their escape, the two of them settled down together, happiness washing over them. Overwhelmed by feelings she could no longer contain, expressed that at last they were liberated from the torment that had plagued them for years. Tears streamed down her face as the pain of past hardships flooded her mind once again. Seeing her distress, gently reassured her, promising that their troubles were behind them and vowing that, from now on, he would keep her safe. After a brief period, fatigue, causing her to doze off with her head nestled on her brother's lap. Observing her, became aware of how truly tired she had become. Despite his efforts to stay calm, a lingering sense of dread gnawed at him. He kept wondering when the terrifying creatures might return, and what methods they would use to find their hiding place. Due to these circumstances, he realized that falling asleep was not an option. He needed to remain alert and attentive, even though fatigue pressed down on him with relentless force. After some time, exhaustion finally him and he drifted off, but his rest was soon interrupted when an unusual motion nearby startled him awake. As he blinked his eyes open, he noticed shadowy shapes shifting through the surroundings. He sprang to his feet, scanning his surroundings for any signs of danger, as he edged forward with care to better assess the situation. An ominous force seemed to thicken the atmosphere, convincing him that would be safer if left undisturbed as she slept, while he set out alone to uncover the source of the disturbance. Acting with both speed and care, he made his way in the direction from which the unsettling energy seemed to emanate. Perched atop a tall branch, he noticed a specific area below where the ominous energy appeared to be radiating from. He realized there was a strong likelihood that he might be discovered. Before he had a chance to respond, one of the figures he had noticed earlier launched a surprise attack from behind, plunging a knife into his neck, lost his balance, and tumbled from the tree after being struck, landing in the midst of a circle of armed opponents. Their hostile attitude became obvious as they started to surround him. Just then, questioned their identities. There was silence among the group, yet one individual finally spoke up, declaring that this was the person they had been searching for. One of them pointed out that, although the woman they discussed was not present, seizing him by himself would still earn a reward of 500 million, which they considered more than sufficient. The sorceress in the group urged everyone to complete their task swiftly, and then she cast a spell that increased the strength of all the men by her side. As her magic radiated outward, the whole group felt a surge of strength, their heightened aggression sharpening as they got ready to launch an assault on. One attacker, gripping a massive club, advanced and struck on the head with tremendous force. Unrelenting, the assailant kept beating him over and over, determined to make sure would not survive. Despite the severe injuries had just suffered, everyone watched in disbelief as he stirred once more, proving he had somehow survived the vicious attack. The shock was unmistakable, especially in the sorceress's expression, since she had been convinced that he could not have survived the brutal injuries he had endured. Rose to his feet again, setting his stance with determination. His eyes swept over the people around him as he questioned if they belonged to the guild. Since no one replied, he remarked that who they were was unimportant to him. Without warning, he surprised the burly attacker who had assaulted him before, delivering a fierce punch that knocked the man to the floor. Surrounded by the shocked faces of his companions, he firmly announced that those who wished him harm would be considered his foes. At that instant, a pair of assailants rushed toward him at the same time. One of the attackers succeeded in cutting off his arm with a sword, then stopped to gloat and laugh at his own success. Without hesitation, reached out and took hold of his detached arm. In an unexpected show of power, he wielded the object as a weapon and delivered a crushing blow to one of his attackers, stunning everyone who witnessed the act. He unleashed a fierce attack, systematically defeating every adversary until none were left standing, their bodies sprawled across the ground. The sorceress was the sole figure still on her feet, looked at her, and pointed out that she was now the final opponent. The sorceress, determined not to surrender, called upon her purple light magic. She conjured a fierce streak of lightning and launched it straight at. She felt a rush of pride and contentment as she confidently declared that his speed would never allow him to escape her strike. Despite witnessing his apparent defeat, she watched in shock as he stood up again, completely unscathed. Terror washed over her, and she struggled to grasp the situation unfolding before her eyes. Desperately, she tried to understand his true identity, her mind racing with confusion. She tried once more to attack him with with a powerful bolt, matching her previous effort, yet held his ground. Anger fueling him, he rushed toward her without hesitation. When she noticed getting closer, she made an attempt to run away. However, made it clear through his words that there was no way he would allow her to get away. After some time had passed, had managed to restrain all of his adversaries, suspending them from tree limbs with secure knots. Afterwards, he collected pieces of their garments, even taking the robe that belonged to the sorceress. A sense of satisfaction washed over him as he discovered clothes that suited him just right. Before departing, he cast a final glance at the captives, making it clear through his actions that their lives had been spared. With an unspoken warning, he let them know that encountering him again would not be wise. He walked back to his sister, finding her still asleep, though she began to move slightly as if she could feel that he was near. Quietly, he expressed regret for disturbing her rest. She gently let him know that his apology was unnecessary and that she was all right. After that, her curiosity led her to inquire about the origin of the clothes he had on. Hoping to keep the truth hidden and avoid alarming her, explained that generous strangers had provided him with the clothes, trusted what he said, and was glad for his good fortune. But her happiness increased further when he revealed that he had also brought clothes for her. Once had the clothes in hand, she moved away to change, making sure to keep some space between herself and respectfully averted his gaze, allowing her some privacy. When he thought she might be almost ready, he reminded her that as soon as she finished, they would have to leave quickly and put more distance between themselves and their current location, and continued on their way, now equipped with the gear and provisions they had seized from those who had ambushed them. And his companions traveled a great distance, and as they moved farther away from their pursuers, felt increasingly confident that their odds of staying alive were improving. After a long trek, the two of them finally arrived at a waterfall, feeling the weight of fatigue settle over them. Noticing how tired they were, proposed that they pause for a brief rest at the spot. The group settled close to the rushing waterfall, starting a fire to chase away the cold. Reached into the bag he had brought along and discovered some food packed inside. His face brightened with excitement at the sight of the sweets. When passed them to her, she expressed her gratitude with a cheerful smile. While they shared a meal, took inventory of the gear he had collected from their assailants, noting several weapons and a handful of emergency devices. Despite his efforts, he was unable to uncover anything helpful. As a result, he explained that he would have to go back to the city in hopes of finding information that could assist them. He got ready to go, mentioning that he had to search for additional food to ensure they would have enough for some time. Before he left, he reminded to remain safely out of sight, and she promised to follow his instructions. The focus shifted to, as he entered the bustling city, his eyes wide with wonder at the sights and sounds that surrounded him. He walked to the bustling market and traded away some of the gear he had gathered. To his delight, the items fetched a much higher price than he had anticipated. Once he had finished, he walked into a store to buy the necessary items, a sense of relief washing over him as he realized he finally had the funds to provide his sister with proper meals. After completing his shopping, he took a seat on the sidewalk, quietly pondering what he should do next. His mind wandered to the other guild members, and he came to understand that Taro had only served as their instrument, while the true villains were the rest of the group. He realized that, in order to make his enemies pay for the pain they had caused him and his sister, he would have to discover what made each of them vulnerable. While was lost in contemplation, his attention was drawn to a blimp gliding above the city, displaying a real-time broadcast featuring and his group. He heard the announcement about Taro's passing, where they spoke of Taro as a valued ally and a thoughtful advisor, stating that he lost his life following severe torment. An image of Taro appeared, accompanied by a solemn promise that his killers would face justice no matter how long it took. News of Taro's torture and death quickly reached the public, causing widespread anger and sorrow, since he had been cherished by so many people. Displayed photographs of and announcing to everyone that they were responsible for Taro's death. Under each image, their names were clearly labeled as the murderers. At that instant, came to understand that the assailants who had ambushed him in the forest were actually following orders from and his group. Sent a pointed message to, questioning whether he was paying attention. Through his words, warned that there was no place to hide, and that consequences for his actions were unavoidable. The audience burst into applause for, their voices calling out for retribution on behalf of the hero they had lost. Amidst the excitement, remained seated, quietly observing the events as they happened. Realized by observing his behavior that true intention was to conceal the wrongdoing committed by himself and his team, cleverly orchestrating a complex ruse to sway public opinion in their favor. Felt a wave of anger rise within him as he observed the scene, silently promising himself that he would reveal who truly was and ensure his complete downfall. 6 days had gone by since and vanished, leaving and his group assembled assembled together, weighed down by worry. In this moment, a man sat bound and helpless while delivered a harsh beating, her frustration clear as he failed to reveal any clues about where the siblings had gone. The struggle made it obvious that the siblings had enlisted his help to find them, but his silence only fueled anger as she punished him without mercy. The sorceress rose to her feet and observed that the team's progress had been so impressive lately that they might soon have no need for mercenaries like him. Despite his efforts to remain calm, Shia's unease was clear as he worried that their secrets might soon come to light and bring about their ruin. Sensing his friend's distress, offered comforting words, insisting that everything would be fine and there was no need for alarm. He went on to clarify that precautions had already been put in place to avoid any scandal, with the siblings being made the scapegoats and wrongly accused of murdering Taro. In addition to everything else, a staggering bounty of 500 million had been set for their capture, making it impossible for anyone to trust them. To the rest of the world, they were now seen as outlaws. Immediately retorted to, questioning whether was suggesting they give up searching for the siblings after everything they had done to Taro. Hastily explained that this was not what she intended. His anger grew even stronger as he revealed that their friend Taro had suffered terrible torture at their hands, and he vowed never to let go of his grudge. Just then, it became obvious that more people were tied up and watching from within the same rooms. Fury boiled over, and tears streamed down his face as he vowed to relentlessly pursue the siblings until he recaptured them, determined to ensure their punishment would be even harsher than anything they had experienced before. Tried to soothe him, expressing her understanding of his feelings and clarifying that Taro had been singled out because he was the most vulnerable member of their group. His anger intensified, and he insisted that refrain from saying anything negative about Taro. In retaliation, swiftly cast a spell, conjuring chains that wrapped around him, and firmly told him to settle down. She expressed her opinion, insisting that the siblings were harmless and posed no actual danger. In contrast, Shikara strongly objected, raising her voice to emphasize that the issue was not about the level of threat, but rather about the harm they had caused Taro. Sensing the rising tension, intervened, trying to calm everyone down and commanding them to end their argument. He noted that the words scrawled in blood across the cell walls delivered a chilling threat. "I will kill you all." This made it clear that each person present had become a target. In spite of the concerns, he offered comfort by explaining that there was nothing to fear, as the siblings would eventually appear when it was time to fulfill their purpose. He went on to explain that support for their cause now came from every corner of the globe. With the siblings' faces widely circulated and a substantial reward announced, he assured that any information about their whereabouts would be reported to them instantly if someone recognized the pair. Shikara hesitated before finally nodding, conceding that words held truth, though a hint of doubt lingered in her eyes. Before the conversation could go any further, interrupted, making it clear that giving in to worry and expecting the worst would not help their situation. He pointed out that they were recognized as heroes across the world, and insisted that their main focus should now be getting ready to face a new Demon King. He wrapped up his thoughts by suggesting that everyone should take a moment to relax and bring the conversation to a close, since the recent days had left them all worn out. He emphasized the importance of getting some rest before continuing their tasks at a later time. Even with everything that had happened, Shikara could not find peace. Thoughts of vengeance against and consumed him, leaving no room for anything else in his mind. He was determined to get retribution, no matter what obstacles stood in his way. The focus moves to, and who remained beside the waterfall. As they begin to stir from their rest, wonders aloud whether had a good night's sleep. She laughed, expressing her gratitude for the restful sleep she enjoyed because of the illusion spell, which she found intriguing. She mentioned that, thanks to its effects, she was able to sleep soundly without experiencing any nightmares. Expressed satisfaction, noting that they had rested enough and it was time to move on. Lingering in one location for too long, thought, might increase the risk of being caught. Reminded everyone that they had become fugitives, and warned that getting captured would have serious consequences. Interrupted her, reassuring her that there was nothing she needed to be concerned about. He reached into his bag and pulled out a mask, mentioning that by putting on these masks, they could hide their identities without losing the ability to see clearly. They both slipped on their masks and observed how practical they were, realizing that wearing them would keep their identities hidden, even if they found themselves encircled by foes. Rose to his feet, suggesting they continue on their way, while wondered aloud if they had an exact place they were heading to. Confirmed that they did indeed have experience with dungeons. The existence of the dungeon as a hidden realm, concealed behind a portal and completely separate from reality, comes to light. Those who reside within this realm are not bound by the rules of reality. Ordinary individuals were barred from entering, since the dungeon's dangerous landscape made it a perfect spot to conceal oneself. At last, the group reaches their chosen spot deep within the dungeon. Recalls information from the dungeon guide, noting that the poison swamp can be found at the very top of the towering mountain ahead. The area had a reputation for being incredibly dangerous, causing most hunters to avoid venturing inside. Because of this, considered it an ideal spot for their group to establish a base, and ascended the staircase that marked the boundary between reality and the mysterious dungeon. As they approached the portal, offered comforting words, vowing to remain by side through whatever challenges awaited them. He reaches out to grasp her hand, and the two of them move forward side by side, passing through the shimmering portal together. They make it across unharmed, and as takes in the surroundings, she finds herself captivated by the strange yet haunting beauty of the area. However, wastes no time in warning her that the entire environment is filled with dangerous poisons. He goes on to clarify that only they have the ability to enter this place without danger, and he urges her to stay alert at all times. He noted that although hunters seldom entered this region, a hunter with a resistance to poison would have little trouble following their trail. Started getting their base ready, moving on to the soft grass below. As soon as he approaches, a one-shot blossom unfurls, scattering poisonous seeds in his direction. He quickly alerts, recounting the recent events, nods in agreement with his judgment, and stresses the importance of exercising great caution. Without warning, his expression shifts to one of terror as her eyes catch sight of something alarming. She quickly signals to, urging him to look at what she has seen. As followed the direction she indicated, he was stunned to find enormous creatures looming directly in front of them. He swiftly reassures, urging her to remain calm, and promises that he alone will take care of the creatures. Just then, a monstrous creature unleashed a deafening roar, signaling its intent to strike. Reacting quickly, lunged forward, determined to shield his sister by launching the first attack. After overcoming the initial monster, he moved to stand next to, giving her confidence by showing that, with one victory behind him, he was now capable of facing these creatures. In that moment, the second creature lunged unexpectedly and devoured him completely in the blink of an eye. Stands frozen, overwhelmed by disbelief, as she witnesses her brother's body vanish by half, leaving only the remaining portion upright in front of her. Soon after, his form started to mend on its own, gradually shifting back to its usual appearance. He tries to fight back against the creature that consumed him, but soon discovers that the monsters within the dungeon are far stronger and faster than any opponents he has ever encountered. After trying multiple times, stopped and realized that this creature was unlike any opponent he had encountered in the past. It was much stronger and more dangerous than anything he had battled before, even when he fought alongside Taro or his beast, Camera. At that instant, called upon her magical powers, determined to shield her older brother from the creature's attack. After this moment, senses newfound power coursing through his body, questioning whether his sister's magic has made him stronger. Yet, what truly shocks him is witnessing his detached hand, lying on the ground, beginning to move independently. He gazes at the object, stunned, while an unusual sensation creeps through his hands and feet, causing him to wonder if this might truly be happening. To test his theory, he positions himself directly in front of the creature and instructs it to advance. Watched in disbelief as the detached hand on the floor obeyed his silent will, scuttling across the ground to force open the creature's jaws, all without having to lift a finger. Seeing his chance, summoned every ounce of his strength and struck powerfully into the gaping maw of the creature. He managed to overcome the creature, but as he stood there, worn out, approached and checked on his well-being. Struggled to catch his breath, but he managed to let her know that he was all right, even if he felt somewhat exhausted. Despite everything else, his thoughts keep circling back to his missing hand, as he struggles to make sense of the recent events. Gradually, it dawns on him that he has discovered a new power. He began to question if its enhancement magic was the reason behind his new ability, but ultimately, he resolved that this skill would greatly benefit them both. A month had gone by since En's daring escape from the guild, and now the scene shifted to a fresh battlefield. In this moment, several warriors fought fiercely as enormous beasts moved in menacing circles around them. Emerged, hefting a massive boulder in his arms as he moved steadily closer to the monsters. When he gets within range, he throws the huge rock toward one of the winged beasts. The blow hits the creature head-on, knocking it down with tremendous impact. Without hesitation, he rushes toward a second monster, seizing its wing in a powerful grip. He manages to defeat the creature, and as a result, his level rises immediately. At that moment, the warriors who stood by his side were filled with admiration, astonished by what they witnessed. One of them remarked silently to himself that this kind of power was only natural for Shikara, who could defeat these beasts without breaking a sweat. Another warrior quietly acknowledged his own limitations, realizing he could never achieve such a remarkable victory. As evening settled in, they gathered around a newly lit fire and shared a meal. However, Shikara appeared distant, his gaze unfocused. Troubled thoughts filled his mind as he pondered where the missing siblings could have gone. A warrior attempted to calm him, explaining that there was no reason to hurry. According to circulating rumors, hunters everywhere were after them because of the bounty, so being discovered was just a matter of time. At that that moment, a different warrior steered the topic towards something even more captivating. He revealed that a friend had told him about a mysterious masked figure who had been displaying incredible abilities and wielding extraordinary strength. He continued, explaining that only the day before, his friend had been traveling toward the poison swamp region to eliminate monsters when he noticed a strange figure in the distance. He claimed that the masked man defeated the poisonous swamp serpent using only his hands, never relying on any tools or weapons. Chikara responded with surprise, explaining that the poison swamp serpent was considered an A-rank creature, known for venom potent enough to kill even a mountain elephant. His comrade agrees, expressing that only Chikara seems capable of overcoming such a dangerous beast. Responds by acknowledging the immense size of the world, noting that it makes sense there could be formidable fighters they have not encountered or heard of before. He goes on to state that anyone capable of defeating the serpent with nothing but their own strength would be someone he definitely wished to encounter. Driven by curiosity, he wanted to know the exact timing of the event, and his companion explained that it had occurred 3 days earlier. Chikara wondered aloud if the individual could still be nearby, but his companion grew worried, cautioning him that the poison swamp was highly dangerous and filled with deadly toxins, urging that they should proceed with care. Just as he begins to speak, Chikara interrupts by delivering a swift, forceful punch directly to his face. He seizes the other's collar and announces that they will leave for the poison swamp without delay, instructing the group to get ready to move out. His eyes light up with excitement as he remarks that the adventure ahead will be exhilarating. The scene then transitions, taking the story back to the toxic swamp, and stood together when an uneasy feeling washed over, alerting him to a change in their surroundings. Noticing his reaction, glanced at him, her eyes filled with concern as she silently questioned the situation. Ignores her completely, choosing instead to spring onto the closest tree. From his new vantage point, he scans the swamp below, alert to the strange and disturbing energy that has just entered the area. The sensation of energy surrounding him is unmistakable, instantly recognized from countless past encounters. Without hesitation, he understands that the person who has just arrived is Chikara. Climbed down from the tree with determination, and told about his plan to confront the other person. Fearful, begged not to leave her side and asked him to stay. Despite the circumstances, offered comforting words, urging her to stay calm and not let fear take over, while also pointing out how much stronger they had become compared to the past. He goes on to explain that now is their opportunity to get back at him. Anxiety lingered, causing her to pause. Sensing her hesitation, pointed out the one thing that set him apart: he was incapable of dying. She cautions him, explaining that is far more dangerous than tarot, and operates on an entirely different level. Before departing, weaves a powerful enhancement spell, boosting his abilities even more. Once she completes her task, quickly heads in his direction. When he arrived at the gate, he quickly ducked behind a towering tree, hoping to stay out of sight. As he pressed himself against the trunk, he realized with surprise that everything around him appeared clearer than ever before. He noticed entering through the doorway to the poison swamp, and understood that his proximity to the exit meant he could make a quick getaway if necessary. Kept watching, silently wishing that Chikara would move further into the swamp and leave the entrance behind. At that moment, he notices a wild boar in the vicinity, and starts to think about how he might use it as part of his strategy. Deliberately sliced his finger with a knife, allowing his blood to flow as an essential element of his plan. He moved closer to the boar and gently touched its side with his injured, bloodied finger. By now, it became clear that he possessed a hypnosis power, which enabled him to cause brief hallucinations in his victim by taking in a small portion of their body. He manages to seize command of the boar, urging it to charge ahead, which causes a few more boars to join in and follow behind. Before long, a group of wild boars charged in the direction of Chikara and his companions. The warriors by his side recoiled in surprise, but Chikara dismissed their fear, mocking them for being so easily shaken. With a confident sneer, he proclaimed that facing these boars was merely a simple exercise before the real challenge. The fighters launched into action, striking at the boars and skillfully defending themselves against their wild charges. Despite witnessing their efforts, found their abilities lacking, dismissing them as much too feeble and expressing a desire to face a more formidable opponent. Soon they successfully defeat the wild boars. Seizing the moment, instructs his group to advance deeper into the area. One of the group suggests taking a short break, but this suggestion infuriates Chikara, who immediately rejects it as a ridiculous idea. The warrior tries to convey his exhaustion, but in an instant, blood starts streaming from his eyes and he struggles desperately to breathe. Before long, it becomes clear to everyone that each member of his team is suffering from identical symptoms, an overwhelming fatigue that sweeps over them without any obvious cause. Stared in disbelief at the condition of his men, confusion and concern etched on his face as he searched for answers about what had befallen them. Just then, a peculiar odor drifted toward him, and with a sudden realization, he identified the smell as a lethal toxin. Despite this, he found it puzzling, since poison swamp boars never released that kind of smell, not even after they died. As he searches for where the poison might have come from, quietly moves closer to him from behind. As as soon as becomes aware of his presence, he launches a swift and forceful attack that propels backward through the air. He suddenly notices the mask hiding his face and understands that is the unknown person everyone has been talking about. Just then, rushes toward him, brandishing a knife. With remarkable speed, he drives the blade into his hand, delivering a quick and precise blow. Suddenly clasped his own wounded hand with his healthy one, taking him by surprise. He follows up with a harsh punch aimed at, yet this forceful blow unintentionally allows to pull away and create space between them once more. Could hardly believe Shikara's response. Instead of showing any anger, Shikara observed his attack with genuine respect, expressing that everything he had heard about his abilities was accurate. It was clear to anyone watching that possessed incredible strength as a fighter. Although grew increasingly frustrated and continued his determined assaults, he was met with Shikara's unwavering smile, which revealed a heartfelt respect for him. Is left stunned by his confident control over both himself and the unfolding events. Shikara went on to express his admiration for those who possessed strength, making it clear that he held nothing but disdain for anyone he considered weak. He points to the bodies of his defeated allies lying on the ground, explaining that their deaths were the result of their own weakness. He continued by explaining that he could feel the overwhelming power within, and for that reason, he was extending an invitation to join his side. He suggests to that he should join the guild, tempting him with alluring offers of riches, prestige, and the company of women. Shikara confidently promises that, should he agree, all his wishes will be granted. Afterwards, Shikara seeks opinion, stressing how irresistible the proposal truly is. Kept quiet, unable to find any words, his mind still tangled in confusion over what Shikara had said and the strange way he had spoken. Shikara moves ahead, setting his foot on the lifeless body of a fallen ally to emphasize his conviction. His admiration lies with those who possess strength, while he holds nothing but contempt for the powerless. He pushes the body aside with a swift kick, reflecting on how he used to believe they possessed real strength, only to realize now how wrong he was. Just seeing them now fills him with annoyance. Paid close attention while Shikara went on, revealing that if he had discovered this about them sooner, he would have just treated them as targets for his aggression. Just then, his thoughts were flooded with vivid recollections of the harsh suffering Shikara had endured in the past. He observes relentlessly kicking the defeated members of his group, and eventually, his curiosity compels him to question satisfaction in bullying those who are powerless. Replied in a laid-back manner, treating the situation as completely ordinary, and expressed that she found it enjoyable and amusing. Puzzled by the situation, asks for an explanation, prompting Shikara to respond that every weak person acts the same after losing to him. He suddenly laughed out loud, recalling how everyone always ended up on their knees, desperately asking him for forgiveness and begging him not to harm them. He continued to ridicule them, vividly recounting the way their faces contorted with fear and hopelessness in their last moments, details that only heightened his twisted sense of satisfaction. In that moment, as the words sank in, his anger boiled over. Consumed by fury and a burning desire for vengeance, he sprang forward, ready to strike back. Shikara dodged the blow with ease and caught hold of his arm, noting with a smirk that the attack was impressive, nodded in agreement. He believed that men ought to test their strength against one another before anything else. He explains that he sees the situation as a challenge to determine who is stronger, and without hesitation, he throws a fierce punch at, moved with quick reflexes, evading the attack and taking advantage of the opening to pull out his knife, driving it sharply into his arm. Shikara pulled back in haste, yet admitted to himself that he never planned on allowing to get away. He recognized his impressive strength. At that instant, understood that Shikara would never release him without a fight, since Shikara's true nature was that of a monster. Without warning, lunged at again, delivering a powerful blow intended to overwhelm his opponent. Was struck with such force that he was hurled backward at an incredible velocity, soaring across a long stretch of ground before slamming hard into a towering tree. Leaning back against the tree, he thinks to himself that he has never experienced such a strong blow before. At that moment, he wondered if Shikara might have held back during the attack on him and his sister while they were trapped. A short while later, walks up to him, her eyes wide with surprise as she wonders how he was able to endure such a powerful hit. Revealed that he had anticipated this outcome, confessing that he had been holding back and had only demonstrated 30% of his true strength. Comes to the startling understanding that this powerful attack, the most intense he has ever faced, is still far from demonstrating the true extent of his abilities. The situation grew even more tense when Shikara saw that was still holding the knife. Instead of backing away, Shikara reached out his hand and gave permission to use the weapon in any way he wanted. He goes on to declare his willingness to face any challenge presents, determined to demonstrate which of them holds greater strength. Sprang to his feet and rushed at, thrusting his knife straight towards stomach. To his surprise, the blade glanced harmlessly off, failing to leave so much as a mark. Chikara curled his lips into a sneer, openly mocking Seph's efforts. He pointed out that S's knife was so blunt and battered that, regardless of how hard tried, it would never be sharp enough to even leave a scratch on him. He points out that failed to cause any harm at all, highlighting just how great the gap in their abilities really is. In his mind, will never be able to surpass him. Raised his voice, demanding silence, and sprang forward, repeatedly trying to stab his opponent, but his efforts were unsuccessful. In response, Chikara remarked that was the first to confront him with such determination, even though he was well aware of Chikara's strength. He eagerly confessed to himself that his respect for increased with each moment. Just before launching a forceful kick at him, is hurled through the air by the force of the blow, landing with a splash in a pool of noxious sludge. Chikara releases a weary sigh, annoyance flickering across his face as he realizes his own enthusiasm caused him to lose control. When he noticed disappearing beneath the poisonous surface, he became convinced that had died. Disappointed, he averted his gaze, announcing that everything had ended and admitting he had hoped for a better outcome from. Without warning, a sharp pain shoots through his shoulder when a knife suddenly lodges itself there as he turns to leave. He yanks the blade out with haste, a sense of dread washing over him. He realizes instantly that the weapon must have picked up poison from his recent fall into the contaminated swamp. The sight of emerging once again from the thick sludge leaves him even more astonished. He can hardly believe what he's seeing and quietly voices his disbelief. Despite having crushed his body with such overwhelming power, manages to stand up yet again. Even more unbelievable, his skin shows no signs of damage after being soaked in the toxic swamp. At that moment, he reacts with shock, recognizing that possesses qualities beyond those of an ordinary human. Suddenly, a new understanding dawns on him, making him wonder if truly is something more. The idea fills him with anger, and he lets out a furious roar, refusing to believe it could ever be true. He rushed toward, unleashing a series of fierce attacks, yet managed to dodge each one with agility, steadily moving back to maintain distance. Unable to connect any of his attacks, consumed by frustration, pounds the ground with tremendous strength. His blow unleashed such overwhelming force that a tremendous explosion erupted, sending shockwaves through the whole surroundings. When the dust finally cleared, the area lay in complete ruins, yet remained untouched at the center of the devastation. However, he quickly spots mask on the ground, which had slipped off as a result of the blast. Chikara suddenly breaks out in uncontrollable laughter, her amusement echoing through the room. After a moment, she turns her attention to and announces with certainty that her suspicions have been proven true. There is no doubt now, it is indeed him. At long last, she has discovered the person she has been searching for. He keeps talking while fixing his gaze on, who stands in front of him trembling with anger, and insists that his search for has lasted all this time. He lets out another laugh, unable to believe that was the masked man the whole time. He then points out that survived his assaults not because of sheer power, but thanks to his remarkable ability to heal rapidly. His voice grows harsh and filled with rage, as he reveals that he has spent all this time tracking him down, blaming him for Tero's death, and longing for the moment when he could finally get his revenge. He announces that the idea of joining forces with him, which he had once mentioned during their initial meeting, is no longer being considered. Hatred and rage lit up his eyes as he fixed a fierce glare on, making it unmistakably clear through his words and tone that he intended to end S's life. Stands firm, showing no reaction to the remarks directed at him. He calmly inquires whether taking his life is truly the sole way to achieve satisfaction and peace. With a defiant tone, he warned that the fate awaiting him would surpass the finality of death itself. Both of them faced each other, their gazes unwavering and full of challenge, each convinced deep down that victory would belong to him. With a determined surge, Chikara advanced, channeling all his strength into an attack meant to finish once and for all. At that moment, stood perfectly still, carefully cutting into the skin of his own hands. As he moved, Chikara caught up to him, springing powerfully into the air and landing directly in his path. Chikara declared loudly that escape would not be permitted. Its incredible speed and strength caused their collision to erupt with force, the violent clash echoing the aftermath of an explosion. Chikara glances forward and realizes that is no longer standing where he had been moments before. Now appears farther away, sprinting directly toward him. Suddenly burst forward with astonishing speed, launching himself skyward in a powerful leap. As he soared above, he angled his descent and dove straight toward his opponent, driving his fist forcefully towards face with all the strength he could muster. To Chikara, the assault hardly registers as a threat. He responds with laughter, questioning whether his efforts have reached their limit. Without a moment's pause, he launched a powerful punch at S's face, determined to show what a true blow should be. Following the forceful strike, he fixed his intense gaze on, making it clear through both his expression and his words that this was the real sensation of true power. His condition appeared critical, which led to cast a concerned look his way, silently wondering about the reason behind his shaking. He suddenly broke into laughter, pointing out that was visibly trembling, and remarked that such fear seemed to be rooted deep inside him. Tried to shift his position, but Chikara kept taunting him, remarking that fear was not something that disappeared quickly. He wonders aloud if can recall the fear that gripped him during his torture in the interrogation chamber. At that instant, it is revealed that detached hand rests just behind Shikara, and throughout the encounter, its attention has never wavered from where it lies. He chooses to shift it, and the moment he acts, his hand starts creeping across the floor, making its way behind Shikara. There it grabs hold of the hand he had intended to use against. Consumed by fury, tried to rid himself of the effect, his thoughts racing as he insisted to himself that some deception must be at play behind this technique. He moves in on, his posture daring and confrontational, questioning whether genuinely thinks a simple tactic like that could lead to his victory. After delivering a forceful kick to his stomach, he let out another laugh and mentioned that he wanted to ask a question. He wondered aloud about the secret behind his rapid growth and impressive strength. When stayed silent, Shikara warned him that his refusal to speak meant the beating would continue until he got an answer. He delivered a swift kick to the other's head, then pressed his foot down firmly. As he did this, he remarked that his presence likely meant his sister was nearby as well. At that instant, remembers the suffering his sister faced because of Shikara, as Shikara keeps talking, declaring that after he finishes toying with, he will begin hunting for her. His anger erupted beyond control as thoughts of his sister, and a rush of old, painful memories overwhelmed him. Despite her opponent lying helpless at her feet, relentlessly delivers blow after blow, refusing to show any compassion. As she attacks, she ponders how she might tie him up to prevent him from piecing his body back together once more. He searched the surroundings for anything he could use to tie him up, but when his gaze returned to where it had been, he discovered had vanished. In that moment, silently materialized behind Shikara, his presence going undetected, his body now fully restored. At that moment, it becomes clear to him that his body is now healing much more rapidly compared to the last time they faced each other. While he absorbed just how much had improved, surprise washed over him as disappeared right in front of him. As soon as realization dawns on him, materializes beside him once more and hurls himself forward, aiming to land a powerful blow that could end the confrontation. Despite his efforts, superior strength enabled him to overpower the attack and send crashing to the ground with a powerful strike. He points out that, although his opponent's speed has improved, it is still useless when faced with his own immense power. He rushed toward, slicing off both of his arms. As struggled, his attacker jeered, doubting whether his power to heal himself would work now, and mocking how much longer could maintain such a weak resistance. Lay sprawled on the ground, his body shockingly absent of both arms, looked at him with a sneer, expressing her disdain for his actions. She pointed out that he spent all his time repairing his body and fighting back without thinking. She confessed her surprise at just how reckless he had become. He soon spotted seated nearby, a gentle smile on his face, which left him puzzled and compelled him to question what found so entertaining. At that instant, caught him off guard and intensified his frustration by revealing that he, too, had entertained the same thought. He felt a sense of relief upon realizing that Shikara was merely an unintelligent fool. At that instant, every detached arm from began to converge around Shikara, responding to silent command to spring into action. Is taken by surprise when all the arms strike at once, but he merely laughs at the assault, questioning whether honestly thinks such a move could harm him. Despite his efforts, he quickly becomes aware that the arms are hitting him with incredible strength, leaving him powerless to break free. Stunned and overwhelmed, he shouts in disbelief, wondering where this strength is coming from, and how the person who had seemed so fearful just moments earlier could now possess such overwhelming power. Replied by admitting that fear was once a part of who he was, but over time, that fear had intensified and changed into an unwavering hatred directed at them. In that instant, overwhelming anger and hatred surged through, pushing him far past his ordinary strength. Fueled by this intense emotion, he struck Shikara with a powerful attack. Because of his attack, he succeeds in cutting off his arm, which makes cry out in both agony and disbelief. Stood tall in front of him, exuding absolute confidence, and announced that a challenge of strength had officially begun between them. Consumed by pain and rage, shouted at, promising to pummel him relentlessly until he resembled nothing but a battered punching bag. His voice grew louder as he cautioned against letting pride convince him that he had achieved anything significant. Fueled by a wild determination, he lunged forward, intent on destroying his opponent completely and ensuring he could never restore himself. At that instant, directed his detached arms to come together, merging them into a single, gigantic appendage. With his immense arm, he unleashes a forceful blow against last hand, causing her to cry out in pain once more. It quickly becomes apparent that his other hand has been cut off as well, leading to question him about his current feelings and his experience of defeat in this battle of strength. He went on to wonder aloud if he was experiencing pain or hatred, then informed him that the terror everyone had suffered during their captivity and torment would now be etched into his own flesh. A week had gone by since the last battle, and the story moved to a different location. Turn 2, wanting to know how ready they were for the approaching confrontation with the second Demon King, explains that their preparations are nearly complete, and mentions that everyone has been working even harder than usual to honor Tero's memory. Without warning, turns to the others, expressing curiosity about Tero's identity and asking someone to remind him. Stood frozen, disbelief etched across her face as she struggled to comprehend his statement, questioning inwardly how he could utter something so shocking. Paused, reflecting on the name. After a brief moment, he echoed it aloud, expressing that it was familiar to him. Burst into laughter and admitted to that he had only been teasing her. Responded sternly, cautioning him not to make light of serious topics again, insisting that such jokes were inappropriate, even in jest. Feeling remorseful, offered an apology, and the two resumed walking together. After some time had passed, brought up to that it had been a while since Shikara was last seen. In response, explained that Shikara was probably away, looking for the immortal brothers. He goes on to mention that frequently treated them as convenient targets for her frustration, something he is all too familiar with. Nods in agreement, confirming that his observation is accurate. Offered comfort, expressing confidence that Shikara would undoubtedly discover a method to bring them both back. Considered this, and agreed that it was indeed possible. Despite everything, he went on to reveal that he blamed them for all his pain and suffering, and announced his intention to end their lives when they came back. Just then, a man hurried over to the group, his voice raised as he tried to get their attention. Turned to him with concern, questioning what could have caused him to rush over so frantically. The man explains with noticeable excitement that a package has been delivered for them, insisting that this is not just any ordinary delivery, and becoming increasingly confused, hurried after him to discover what was inside. Upon reaching their destination, turned to and inquired about the situation. She, taken aback by his unexpected question, counters with one of her own. Then, gesturing toward the box, she explains that this is the cause of everything. When peers inside, he discovers severed hands and one of his eyes. His body shakes with fear as he draws in a sharp breath, shocked by the sight. In his mind, he recognizes the tattoo, unable to believe what he is seeing. It becomes clear to everyone that the hands are Later on, the three of them meet privately, still reeling from disbelief, as the box holding severed arms sits between them. Decided to use her magic to find out if the arms in question were genuine or just tricks of the eye. After her spell finished, she realized with certainty that the arms were completely real. It becomes clear to that is the rightful owner, and this discovery fills her with intense anger. Noted Shikara's reputation for being exceptionally strong, so she found it hard to believe that anyone could have overpowered him, and questioned who might be responsible for his current state. Explained that the person responsible didn't just remove arms, they had intentionally sent them as a message, revealing a deep and powerful resentment. He went on to suggest that, because Shikara had been looking for the immortal brothers, it was worth considering that they might be the ones behind it. Firmly dismissed the suggestion, expressing her strong belief that the pair stood no chance against. Admits that uncertainty began to creep in after their group defeated Tero. He goes on to clarify that, despite Tero being considered the least skilled combatant on their squad, his abilities still surpassed those of the majority of mid-tier hunters. Despite their remarkable growth, had already fallen and now, renowned as one of the world's mightiest fighters, had been taken down as well. Even though both warriors had reached new heights in strength, they were ultimately overcome. Expressed her doubts, insisting that, regardless of the truth, there was no way they could have become strong enough to defeat so quickly. Wonders aloud about the secret behind their team's impressive strength, prompting to remind him that he already knows the answer. He explained that repeatedly defeating the sisters had caused their levels to rise with every encounter. At that instant, he understands the reason behind's earlier question, and unable to believe it, he insists that such a thing cannot be true. Went on to clarify that whenever they overcame powerful adversaries, their levels rose due to the extra experience points they earned. He went on to suggest that they had probably fought and killed one another over and over, each driven by the desire to gain experience and grow stronger as quickly as they could. Reflected on his statement, memories of Tero and experiences surfacing in her mind, and she found that his reasoning genuinely aligned with what she had witnessed. Went on to clarify too, and that the sisters had continued to grow stronger, increasing their abilities until they were finally powerful enough to confront them and take their revenge. His anxiety intensified as disbelief took hold, causing to step in and try to soothe her. She mourns the unfortunate events that befell, yet emphasizes the importance of concentrating on their next steps. She steps behind and explains that she has used magic to calm his thoughts, preparing to set the enchantment in motion. Expressed gratitude, rose to her feet, and announced that she had made up her mind before exiting the room. Once he was gone, expressed his regret to and requested some time to himself. Respecting his wishes, quietly walked away. After she left, walked over to the box and lifted the lid, his eyes landing on Shikara's severed hand inside. Disgust twisted his features as he gazed at it. He let out a mocking scoff, inwardly questioning whether the sisters honestly thought such a display would scare them. He picked up the box, dismissing its contents as a pointless scare tactic, and declared it to be nothing more than an empty threat before tossing everything inside straight into the trash. He acknowledged that overcoming was no small feat, yet he dismissed them as naive. His attention then shifted to the eye, which had fallen from the box and now rested on the floor. Without a moment's pause, he brought his foot down, smashing it to pieces. At that moment, the truth came to light. The eye did not belong to Shakara, but to who had secretly used it to watch the guild and study how they responded, stood atop a tall building, using his enchanted eye to observe the guild's headquarters from a distance. Despite his vigilance, concern tugged at him, prompting him to decide it was time to head back to her side. He thinks back on his real motivation, realizing that mailing the package offered a simple reason to visit the city and buy necessities for the group. Even though poisons do not affect him, the meals available in the swamp leave much to be desired. After finishing, he heads out to shop, all the while remembering that his outfit is protected by magic. Even if his clothes were to rip or get ruined, they would mend themselves without any effort from him. He purchases a selection of lovely dolls as gifts for, hoping they will lift her spirits after he has been away from her for such an extended period. Darted across the city rooftops, skillfully staying out of sight to keep from being spotted by hunters. As he made his way forward, his sharp eyes caught sight of a group of hunters moving along the streets beneath him. He soon notices that the group is pursuing a girl who seems quite young, and he recalls that this particular street is overseen by the guild. At first, he thinks about not getting involved, but when he sees the hunters surrounding the girl and preparing to seize her, he hesitates. As the hunters advanced, they jeered at her, insisting that she had no escape routes remaining. Unable to stand by any longer, leapt down from above and made it clear through his actions that he detested those who preyed on the weak. As confusion spread among the hunters, one of them shouted out, demanding identity. However, remained silent and instead sprang into action, swiftly striking the group and sending them crashing to the ground. He glanced at the girl, suggesting there had to be a specific reason they were pursuing her, and urged her to escape while she still could. Despite the situation, the girl remains motionless and silent, showing no intention of fleeing. Driven by curiosity, he moves nearer to catch a glimpse of her face, and as soon as he realizes who she is, surprise floods him as he wonders aloud about the reason for her presence.
Lately, I've had a strong addiction to watching manhwa and manga recap videos. Every single day, I find myself binging one after another, losing hours and days doing absolutely nothing productive. And honestly, it's getting out of hand. So, maybe we can make these viral videos too. I mean, look at the views, the growth, the community these creators are building. It looks simple, right? But that's a trap. You go down this endless rabbit hole, spending money, losing sleep, hiring editors and writers from Fiverr and Upwork, and still feel like you've been robbed. Because don't forget how emotional the YouTube algorithm can be with making videos go viral. It's unpredictable, especially when the market's saturated, competition's relentless, and somehow other creators are dropping 10-hour videos daily while you're stuck trying to finish one. That's when I realized something had to change. So, I built the solution, the Web2 Narrative Suite, a complete one-click system that handles everything from cropping, script narration, text-to-speech, image processing, and full video generation in one smooth process. Save money, reduce hours of work, and have a tool that only gives you straight results. Click on the link down below and experience it for yourself. And if you want even more tools to supercharge your YouTube recap journey, visit my Ko-Fi and Patreon pages where I drop weekly new tools designed to keep you ahead as AI continues to steal our jobs. So tap in now before you get left behind.